Good evening. I'd like to call this regular meeting of council to order April 22nd, 2025, Council Chambers, Town of St. Mary's. We are broadcasting live on the Town of St. Mary's YouTube channel. The Council for the Town of St. Mary's acknowledges with gratitude and respect that we are gathering on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, people of the Longhouse, giving thanks for all creation. I'll begin this evening by asking for declarations of pecuniary interest, starting with Councillor Craigmile.
None.
Councillor Edney.
None.
Councillor Luna.
None.
Councillor Lucas.
None.
Councillor Pridham.
None.
Councillor Alward.
None.
And I have none. The agenda was circulated. Are there any errors, omissions, or problems with the agenda? Seeing none, I'll put a motion on the floor that the April 22nd, 2025 regular council meeting agenda be accepted as presented. So I'm willing to move that motion. Moved by Councillor Craigmile, seconder. Councillor Alward. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion's carried. Item number 4 is our public input period. I've received nothing. I'll just check with our clerk anything received today, which moves on to item number 5, which is the acceptance of the minutes. The minutes for the regular council meeting, April 8th, 2025, were published in your package. Are there any errors, omissions, or issues with the minutes as published? Okay, seeing nothing then, I'll put a motion on the floor that the April 8th, 2025 regular council meeting minutes be approved by council and signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. So I'm willing to move that motion. Moved by Councillor Edney, seconded by Councillor Luna. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? The motion's carried. I have nothing under correspondence, which will put us on to item 7.1 with regards to staff reports, administration. Mr. Kittmer, please.
So thank you, Your Worship. So Council, the monthly report for administration is before you. I just wanted to make note of, I think, 3 key points. So for the downtown service location review, I can confirm that that project is still moving along. We've received a first draft of the final concept design for the building, incorporating some of the comments from council and the committee. It's going through a review that includes building department review first, then review by the broader staff group. Once we have our comments incorporated in, a next draft will be completed by A-Link, come to the committee in about mid to late May. And our expectation is that the draft concept plan for the design, as well as our operating draft plan, will come forward to council in mid to late June. Again, it still remains our goal to have that project done in the first half of the year. And then for the next budget cycle, we can consider whether or not we want to start investing in more detailed architectural design of the building, including a replacement of windows and things like that. With respect to public transportation, last meeting you awarded the transit needs assessment, which was a project in partnership with North Perth. I can confirm that North Perth has retained Dillon Consulting to do the work, and our project kickoff will happen on April 30th. At some point in the next, say, 2 months, we'll start to see a very public campaign asking for the public's input on public transit in the community, what works for them today, and to better understand what some of their needs are. And finally, I just wanted to give kudos where it's due to our community outreach worker. You'll notice in her report that she's doing a good deal of true proactive outreach, organizing CMHA to come in and have peer-to-peer sessions at the library. And in addition, hosting a very successful coffee with the outreach worker on April 12th. I wasn't able to attend, unfortunately, due to illness, but I understand it was very successful, and we had a number of individuals come out that weren't necessarily connected with her in the past, but she just reported that she found it to be very, very helpful for herself and those individuals. With respect to clerks, Jenna has indicated to me that it's business as normal, and we're happy to take any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor Alward.
Thanks, Your Worship. I got asked a question at the BIA AGM just regarding parking and the impact of 14 Church Street on parking. Is there anything kind of built into this whole process that will consider parking?
Nothing to date. So that's been one of my difficulties through this project, and I think I've self-described myself as giving council very flaky answers at your last meeting, because it's difficult to do any of that future planning without actually knowing what the building was going to be used for. So when you ask me questions about how's it going to be operated, how's it going to be staffed, what its hours of operations, what's the parking impact going to be, I couldn't actually answer those until I knew that council was going to bless how the building was going to be used. Now that we know that, the idea is that we will come up with that draft concept plan of how it's going to be used, hours, staffing, and all of those good things. And in that, we'll project what we believe to be parking impacts, and have to have a discussion. I think overall, like 14 Church Street will have an impact on parking, undoubtedly. But overall, we know that there is, we're starting to see more and more parking pressure. The parking study last year showed that between in those busy hours up until early afternoon, we're getting very close to being at capacity. And I know there was some conversation before the meeting, just so council's aware, that we still have yet to do a parking blitz in the downtown core, and it's something that Jenna's going to take away and speak with our bylaw enforcement officers about, because there are, and we know this, there are habitual users of parking stalls downtown that are used over 3 hours. So the best way to correct that is through education and enforcement, and we do still owe that to the downtown.
Councilor Craig Mao?
Thank you, Worship. So Brent, I'm still a little confused with 14 Church Street, and I understand with the downtown service location review, you're going to get to a certain point. But before you get on too far with design and whatnot, I mean, you've heard from the council table that a lot of us are concerned about what the cost is going to be, and that's going to impact staging or whatever. So when will it come back for council to have some input?
So it's what.
Versus just seeing a.
Yep. So in my view, you've already given your significant portion of the input in terms of how the building will be used for in the future. So again, the vision has been a community and cultural hub, and last meeting you saw those the space needs analysis about what uses will go in the building and what spaces will be assigned. So the next deliverable in the project will be a final concept design in terms of a floor plan, but not final architectural design in terms of we would not be to the point where we'd have drawings we could issue for a tender. So what you'll see is very similar to what you saw at the last meeting. Will be a 2D plan that shows color-coded rooms, saying, well, we're going to assign 600 square feet to makerspace. We're going to assign 1,000 square feet to staff, and things like that. You also then asked me to come up with a concept operating plan. So we will do our best to make some assumptions on the operating hours of the building, how much it's going to take to staff it based on the uses, and what we think the annual operating cost will be, say, in year one. The consultant will also give you what we call a Class D construction estimate, so plus or minus 25% on how much they think the renovation will cost. And I'm trying to think. I think that was everything I was at. And then we're going to also ask the consultant or somebody else about what the cost implications of what phasing that work over time would be. If you wanted to say only finish the basement and the first floor and save the second floor for the future, what the difficulties would be. So you've already had some, in my view, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, and you have to do it very soon. I feel that council's already come to a consensus and given us direction on what the future use of the building is going to be. Now we're just going to that fine tuning of how we move those uses around inside the building so that we best use the space. And then we'll give you a recommendation on how to best use the space, as well as how much it's going to cost and how we believe it could be operated in the early years.
And I agree with what it is you're saying, but sitting around this table, we've decided kind of what's going to be there. And if our decision around the table is almost unanimous, that the first thing we should be doing is, if it is on the first floor, is doing that space for the library or whatever, and it's going to be X dollars. And if that's our decision, then that's the way we're going to go, because I can almost be guaranteed right now that we're not going to go and be able to do both floors all at one time. It's a long-term project. So I'm just saying, versus the service review, I think it's going to be very soon at the stage where it's got to come to council to make those decisions as to.
And my belief is that will be in June. I think that'll be part of your June package.
And if I can just carry on, because I don't think it's something we're going to make a decision at in a 2 or 3 hour council meeting. We're probably going to have more like just the service, a 3 or 4 hour meeting to stage one to see where we're at, and then think about it and then come back again, I would think.
Yeah,
Especially with the dollars.
Yeah, again, that will be, again, it's completely your prerogative in your discussion. I think the only thing I would say this in the report at the time, and I'll say it today, is that staging construction it seems like a good idea because you think it saves money, but construction will never be cheaper than it is today. And so that's something you'd have to think about, that you would then, if it was say a $4 million project, because that's probably the scale of costs we're talking about, to do only a couple of floors, that's great. In the future, you then have to then pay mobilization costs and bid costs and tender costs and things like that again. And in the future, that per square foot dollar amount is going to go up because we know construction costs increase anywhere from 3 to 8% per year. The only other concern you'd ever hear me say too is that I wouldn't want it to be like, buying a house, finishing the whole thing and say, okay, we'll finish the basement later on in our lives. And we all know that the basement never gets finished, right? So the most cost-effective time to do the renovations will be, at the same time. But if the concern is making sure that we can buffer out the cost for an affordability reason, again, we can give you options around that. Again, even options around whether you want to spend the amount today or whether you want to do it in the future. Again, what that debt looks like and how we would fund it. So, I can assure you, we've heard the concerns. We know that that's what council wants to see. We know that there is some concern around the capital costs, and rightly so. You're spending public dollars. And we will do our best to give you as much information as we can to make you feel comfortable with it. And if you're not comfortable with it, the nice thing about this project is there's never been a rush. And I don't want to minimize the library space needs in any way, because we know that they have a defined space need. But for the rest of the town, we bought that property because it was a very strategic opportunity to buy it at the time. The building was in poor condition, and I think we were concerned it was going to fall into significant disrepair and may have to be torn down at some point in time. And we also felt that at the point in time we purchased it, that we would never get this opportunity to have this campus of services here. We bought it admittedly not having a defined space need for the town. We knew that space need would have to be determined through this public process. But if we don't build it in the next 5 years, things would just operate as status quo. But you will need it at some point in time as your administration grows. You will definitely need more office space, so it's going to be a good thing to have. And I'd have to say that, personally and professionally, I think I'm now very much behind that vision of it being community cultural hub, especially geared to younger folks who don't have, who aren't, I think Angela would say this more perfectly than I would, who aren't of a sports background, who aren't necessarily of an academic background, but really need creative space. I think we lack that in our community. And I think we've noted that for a long time, that we kind of have a programming gap between age 12 and about age 25. And I think this building would really fit that bill, so.
Okay, further questions? I just wanted to point out that the United Way, see there was a funding shortfall, which was news to me. I was surprised to read that. But where are we at with them in terms of carrying on with the program? And is that part of this supported partner meeting, or are they interested in carrying on the program, or where are we at with them?
Yeah, so through your worship to council, yes, forgive me, I forgot to make note of that, local fundraising was, so the community outreach program is funded by local fundraising. And it did fall short this year, so we're receiving $25,000 instead of our $30,000. The United Way is still very much in favor of supporting the program. So we are, the last year of our funding is this year, so it ends on, March 31st of 2026. But impact funding applications that were just closed a couple of weeks ago, we did submit for this program again, and we submitted an expression of interest. And it's been approved to move on to the full approval stage. So, and based on all of our conversations with staff at the United Way, again, they're looking at this in a very supportive light. I would hope and expect that it gets approved again for 3 years. But they do have a caveat in that, in our funding agreement, that they have the right to decrease funding if they don't meet local goals. So that's what's happened in this case.
Okay, thanks. Anything further, Mr. Kipner? Okay, thank you for your report. So the suggested motion is that admin 17-2025 April monthly report administration be received for information. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Lucas, seconded by Councillor Pridham. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Next up, we have a request from the Rotary Club of St. Mary's with regards to a 100th anniversary proclamation, and I welcome Mr. Oliver this evening, who I believe is the president of the Rotary Club of St. Mary's. Welcome.
Good evening, Council. As the Mayor mentioned, Mark Oliver is with us tonight. He is the president. He has submitted this request to you. The request is that the month of May be known as Rotary Month here in St. Mary's, which would come by way of a proclamation which was included with the staff report in your agenda. As well, something to point out that last year was 100 years of Rotary Club being in Canada, and this year marks 100 years of Rotary Club being specifically here in St. Mary's. Staff have reviewed a request to approve the Rotary flag to fly for a week in May. So we're just waiting on that flag, and then we'll make sure that we have that flowing here at Town Hall during that time. The proclamation, as I said, is in your agenda package, and the resolution was for that the month of May be proclaimed as Rotary Month. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor Edney.
Thank you. Just for the record, I think last year was 100 years of St. Mary's, but it was chartered. Is that correct? It's been in Canada for 110 years? Longer, yeah. Just for the record. And I think it was correct in your record in the report. Thank you.
Okay. Anything further? Okay, thank you. I think the request is pretty straightforward, and we all know that Rotary has touched the lives of many in St. Mary's, including my family. So I'm very happy that we're able to do this as a small gesture of thanks to the club. So the suggested motion then is that Admin 19-2025 Rotary Club of St. Mary's 100th Anniversary Proclamation Request Report be received, and that Council proclaim the month of May as Rotary Month in St. Mary's. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Luna, seconded by Councillor Edney. Any further discussion? Seeing now, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, thank you. So the next item is 7.1.3. There's been a lot in the news about this piece of legislation, and caught many by surprise, including a call from the media that I thought was a joke. Anyway,
I wonder if you can fit it for a cake.
So through the mayor to council, it does not appear to be a joke. Ontario Regulation 530 of 22 added Part 6.1 to our Municipal Act. That part was added in 2022, first of all, to support the cities of Toronto and Ottawa with some additional powers for a strong mayor formation of those municipalities. 26 large and fast-growing municipalities were added to the legislation with an implementation of July 1st of 2023. Then, as the mayor did allude to, this did catch many of us by surprise. There had been no conversations with members of council, with the head of council, or with staff leading up to it. But 169 additional municipalities have been added to that legislation for that to take effect on May the 1st of 2025. So those 169 additional municipalities, what it has been cited is that those are councils of more than 5 individuals on the council, and that is why they have grouped those 169 together. The provincial government has cited that the legislation update is related to supporting a number of provincial priorities. The first one that has been talked about for a couple of years now is the increase of 1.5 million new homes by 2031, as well as constructing and maintaining infrastructure to support that development. In the staff report, there were 11 areas of this change that will be impacted that have been outlined for your information. In addition to the staff report, there was an attachment of an exact excerpt of Section 6.1 of the Municipal Act that has been added there, just so that you have the exact wording of what each of those 11 items involve and how they are to take effect. I'm not going to go over them as you have that information before you, but I will point out that while there has been an increase in email traffic from other municipalities that have passed resolutions regarding their council's decisions related to the legislative changes, as it stands today, the legislation will come into force and effect for May the 1st. There has been no discussion whether or not this would be revoked by the provincial government. And if past practice is any indication, I am not confident that the opposition from some municipalities in St. Mary's will create a change. This means that any decision implemented by a head of council shall be done so in writing and in accordance with the regulation. So we as staff are still trying to understand exactly what that looks like, how that must be communicated, because those decisions are to be public information. There is an understanding amongst some of the municipalities that have already gone about the change is that this information should be shared on the municipality's website that would list each of those decisions. For everyone's benefit, those decisions may be when the mayor makes those decisions to implement something or do something or to delegate authority. That must be done by way of that decision that is public facing. So while this is all new to the town, there are a number of staff that have been offered additional workshops and trainings coming up in the next couple of weeks to understand how this has impacted some of those larger and fast-growing municipalities and how they have implemented it. So what does a mayor decision look like? Is there a standard format? Once it has passed, is there a way to communicate that? Is that just on the website? Does that come by way of the next staff report to council? Just lists that so that everyone is aware of what has been implemented. While we learn that, and as changes to our municipal process take effect specifically here in St. Mary's, if we need to review existing policies, procedures, or bylaws, we will bring those forward to you, point out what does need to change, and make you aware and ask for your approval at that time. So as I said, one more time, this is very new. St. Mary's, I think if I can echo the sentiments of many of my colleagues with similar sized municipalities, we were never anticipating this. We have been following it, but the day-to-day intricacies of how it is implemented is certainly new to myself and new to a number of my colleagues. So we will be looking forward to others that have gone before us to share their processes. So that's what I have, and the resolution is before you that it is received for information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments? Councillor Edney? Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship, nothing changes from our day to day. We still operate exactly the same way, unless we choose to operate differently. So nothing really changes at this table. Is that correct?
So certain things will change if the mayor decides to implement any of the number of 11 items that were listed there. That does not come to you for decision. Specifically, the budget, it is the head of council's responsibility to table the budget. So what we are trying to work through is understanding, again, how others have brought that forward. Is the mayor involved more with staff meetings? Is the mayor who's or the head of council the one who is putting together those details ahead of time and giving guidance on what they wish to see? And then it is up to you possibly to vote on it, unless the mayor is stating, this is what I tabled, this is the guidance that I want to see, and then they would require only a 1/3 vote to support that. So some changes, still council meetings, any of those day-to-day operations that you would see at a council level that are not 1 through 11 items, you would continue to be involved in that decision-making process.
Councillor Lina? Yeah.
Thank you, Worship. I've got one word to say, undemocratic. This is totally undemocratic. To me, I'm questioning the value of council in the future. And I'm not speaking to this seated mayor, but I'm saying that a future mayor could really put this power to bad use. I think one of the major jobs that we have as councillors is a budget. which is what affects all of our meetings, is the budget. And now what I'm understanding from this, we really won't have any input into that budget. We could be told by a mayor, this is the budget I'm presenting, and I need 2 of you to accept it, and it's done. Undemocratic. And I don't understand why this was sprung on municipalities. We had 7 days to respond, is my understanding. From April the 9th, we received word of this, and we were given till April the 16th to respond, which none of us even knew about. So no response. I've got a myriad of points here, and I'm trying to make sense of them all, but I just feel like I'm questioning these powers that we're putting in one individual, control over the CAO and heads of departments, hire, fire, discipline, whatever. The CAO has to have confidence in the people around this table that he can speak freely to us and not be worried about the opinion of one individual seated at the table. Just multiple things that are wrong. Now, I did receive an email from the clerk today from the town of Parry Sound. They passed a motion to politely decline this, and I've been told that it's symbolic because, as you said, the legislation is done. But I believe that if enough municipalities protest this and enough of the public are aware of this, people I talk to don't even know this is happening. They have no clue what's going on. But I believe that if enough municipalities and enough private sector speak up about this, legislation can be revoked, it can be reversed, and I think that's what needs to be done. And I had planned to bring forward a motion basically stating that we respectfully reject this, but I'm told that more information is coming, so maybe I should wait with that motion. But I'd like to hear from other councillors how they feel about this, because I'm very passionate about this. It's not Canadian, it's not democratic.
Okay, further thoughts, comments? Councillor Craig Mile?
Thank you, Worship. I'm not overly enthused about this, to be quite honest with you. However, I'm not aware of how all other councils operate. And I think the mayor made a good point before the meeting that maybe there is certain councils that do not seem to work together or collaborate and have this, and in order to get anything done, maybe there needs to be somebody making a decision. And I don't know, it is a possibility out there and that can happen. I guess it just throws me into a loop as to my time sitting here. I understood that the mayor and the council got the CAO, but the CAO looked after all his staff, and then it was up to him if he wanted to come tell us what he was doing with his staff. So it wasn't council or the mayor dictating his staff. So I'm really confused about that when I read these in the first couple points, So I don't think that if I looked at our current council and the mayor, I don't see us ever using it. However, maybe it does exist out there somewhere where it doesn't, but I mean, I don't really know.
Councillor Lynn?
I agree with Councillor Craigmile that this current council probably has no worries, but there's an election next year. We don't know who's going to be sitting particularly in that chair, and I truly believe that, I'll say it, the wrong type of person sitting in the mayor's chair could have a very drastic effect on what happens in St. Mary's, because he has this power, and I think we need to protest it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Howard?
Thanks, Your Worship. I guess on the whole, the way I look at it is I understand what the province is trying to do. I understand their objective, and I think that there's some dangerous wording in here with the whole provincial priorities thing. That's always sketchy to me. But I guess when it comes down to it, I do agree with Councillor Luna that this does feel incredibly undemocratic, and it's counterintuitive to the point of mayor and council and the relationship that I believe in my principles that we are supposed to have. So I would say I agree, Councillor Luna, with all that you've said.
Councillor Brenham?
Thank you. Yes, I too agree with Councillor Luna's points, very much so. The world of politics seems to be taken over by power, strong minds that are, influencing the United States, and who knows what can happen here in Canada. And this is maybe a small little indication of how things can get derailed simply by the wrong person being in the chair. And I agree with that. Thank you.
Further comments, questions? Councillor Craigmile?
Yeah, and if I can just add that, because there's not a lot that we really know, one of my real concerns when I read through this is that if it generates a lot of extra work for the clerk, I mean, it's one of these things that I've gone through with Upper Thames. You get a change in the Conservation Act, and all it did was increase the administrative duties that ends up costing a fortune. So no matter what you say about what happened there, a lot of the things they had to do were because of the change in the legislation. And all of a sudden, wouldn't surprise me in 1 or 2 months, we come and saying, oh, we need to have another clerk hired. And it's quite possible. There's a lot of bylaws to go through.
Any further? Councillor Luna?
Just a question, if I may, Your Worship. Thank you. I haven't read the bill or anything, but I wonder if there's any mention in the mayor's power over the seated council. Does he have the power to dismiss a councillor? He doesn't right now. Nobody does, but there are sanctions against individual councillors, as I'm aware. But will the mayor have power to dismiss a councillor?
Through your worship to Councillor Luna, there is no reference to that. The Municipal Conflict of Interest Act still stands. So if the head of council or any member of council has a concern with a member across the table, there is still a process in which they would go through about submitting that to our Integrity Commissioner for review. The other detail is that if we have a local board or any of our committees, the mayor is able to appoint a chair to those. So if you happen to be a chair on our committees, then the head of council may go ahead and change that. That's my understanding as it stands today, and what has been going on since the change in the beginning of 2023.
Thank you, Worship. I would ask the clerk if you could forward that resolution from the town of Parry Sound to all councillors and the mayor, please, to read it. And what's the plan going forward? Because I do want to bring a motion to the table regarding this, but I think that tonight isn't the night to do that.
So there are a couple of workshops, seminars, webinars, whichever, that are coming up. The last that I've been made aware of is a 2-part on the 7th and 8th of May. So potentially, if we have enough information to bring back a report for the first meeting of May, we will do that. Although I'm not confident that there'll be enough information to share with you at that time. So more than likely the end of May, as we begin to understand what sorts of documents are needed to be prepared, where we're going to put this information on the website when decisions are made by the head of council. So in May, I just can't promise that it'd be the first meeting if we'll have enough information at that time.
So if I can make a couple comments, as I jokingly said in the beginning, I was totally taken off guard by this. And so I've done a bit of reading and reached out to a couple of people and really tried to figure out why and how. And there's a few interesting things in this. I find it particularly intriguing that, because there's always often conflicts in other municipalities about directing staff. And I find it pretty intriguing that you can direct staff, but it has to be in writing, and all these things have to be in writing. And then, so as we all know, putting things in writing can mean lots of different things. So first thing I want to say is that there's a lot of interesting parts in this that I still don't understand how and why. And I wanted to assure council that I won't be putting anything in writing anytime soon. And I had to think back on my time during this particular council, if there would have been a time or a situation where I may have said, man, I need to do this, or I need to overrule council, and I quite frankly can't think of one. So this group, I think, has worked well together. Going forward, there's, just like we've experienced with the Ford government with the Planning Act, and respectfully, there's still things in the new Planning Act that we don't totally understand what they mean in terms of the planning rules and so forth. So I think this is a work in progress. I'm surprised, one of the things that no one's talking about in talking to other people, because we're always consistently concerned with costs, one of the things that really shocks me is that if I were to resign this evening, the municipality would be forced to have a bylaw, or a by-election, which is an extremely expensive undertaking and a lot of work for a clerk's department. I was shocked that was part of this, and I don't know why it was, but that's something that no one's even mentioned. When I read them, I'm thinking, why would they do this? So in reading this, there's certain things that I get. I think in larger centers where you're dealing with very large groups of councils, I can think of examples, particularly the City of London, where I think it has been advantageous for the mayor to produce the budget and then it go through council, because it is, in the past, it's been such an arduous and long process. We don't have that problem, actually. We've worked every year with this group to increase the time efficiency of the budget, and it's worked well. So as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing that I see that me personally would to enact. The councilor's Luna's point, I think there are concerns about the budget going forward. Specifically, if I was a mayor that said I want the budget increase to be 1%, for the next 4 years, it would create some interesting politics. But certainly, the mayor would have a lot more sway in making that happen than the traditional budget process that we go through, where it's back and forth and we prioritize projects like we do every year. And to me, and I've expressed it several times, I mean, it's my least favorite time of the year, but it actually works quite well. So it certainly has been interesting. We certainly don't know what everything means. The government certainly is intent on bringing legislation in as of May 1st, and I can't see, certainly in my time going forward, that I would necessarily want to make a lot of changes, and I'm not sure why they've made such drastic changes, other than to say there are some dysfunctional councils out there. Whether this would solve the problem, I don't know. I'm not so sure, but I've certainly been surprised, because this is almost indicative of some of the ways that the mayorship is set up in U.S. towns and cities. That's pretty much where this comes from, to your point, which I think is a good one. So, we'll have to wait and see. I'm not opposed at looking at a resolution and speaking to the province, because quite frankly, I think that it's there's a lot of things. I think it's ridiculous that if the head of council were to leave the position and council felt they could function properly, why would the municipality be forced to spend 40 or 50? I don't know how much a by-election would be, probably $40,000 or $50,000, I'm thinking, and a lot of time. Why would they be required to make that money? Why is that part of that resolution? There's a lot of things in here that they don't explain. But again, we have seen this before with Bill 23, and hopefully we can get some more explanations to better understand, because I certainly don't understand the necessity for a lot of these things. Certainly in my time here, I don't see the necessity for a lot of the changes, and I can see it can be quite alarming to staff as well, because there's a potential to create a lot of conflict. So I think Councillor Luna has raised a lot of good points, but I do think that we need to have a better understanding what's going on, as the clerk has suggested, because this is a big change, or maybe it's not a big change. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to do the budget. I don't have time for that. I certainly am intent on delegating and going through it the way we have. You know what I mean? And it's worked well. So I don't foresee a lot of changes in terms of that. But to that point, if one ran on a one horse agenda and suggesting whatever it be that we build 4 more ice pads, it could become as an example, it could become quite divisive. So we'll have to wait and see. I just I did attend AMO last year, didn't hear anything, and that was the other interesting part. Our advocacy group AMO kind of took a neutral position on it. I don't know if you read their statement or not, but they basically just said that that heads of councils are very responsible, and municipal government's a great form of government, closes to the people, so we don't have concerns, and we'll see what happens. That's basically what it said, and I read that and I thought, huh. Because certainly if a job description of the nature of a counselor or anyone was gonna change that much, you think there'd be some sort of heads up or more of a rationale, but that doesn't seem to be the position. So I don't understand why. I get it. There's a housing crisis, and we talk about it just about every meeting, and drastic problems sometimes require drastic measures, but I'm not so sure this solves the problem. So. Okay. Anything further from council? So there will be a lot more information about this, and I mean, it's not new. There are municipalities doing it, but I said, you know, I think in certain larger municipalities, I can see the necessity. Here in a smaller town, I don't get it. So, Councilor Lucas?
Thank you, Susan Mayor. I'll just chime in for, I'm in agreement with everybody around the table that I do definitely have some concerns with this. I guess my thought is I'm not in a huge rush, knowing that the next 18 months, I think we're okay, but I think it definitely needs to be on the radar and see what comes out of this and see what starts happening in other municipalities. And instead of having that knee-jerk reaction, let's see what happens and form a response. You know, challenging this from our perspective. So I'm not in a huge rush to deal with it because I don't think it's imminent on our plates right now, but I do think it could be a problem in the future for sure.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? All right, so the suggested motions to amend 2025 strong mayor legislation update be received. So I'm going to move that motion. Moved by Councillor Alward, seconded. Councillor Lucas. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Next up on the docket, we have item 7.1.4 with regards to the agreement of purchase and sale for 11 Kane Street. Mr. Kittmer, please.
Yep. So thank you, Your Worship. So Council, tonight I'm bringing forward a draft agreement of purchase and sale. It's for a piece of property that Council has been aware of that we've intended to sell to Group 40 Holdings, Inc. Since about August of last year. Just so that Council is aware, we are slightly doing this out of order as compared to normal. So normally I would bring in a draft agreement of purchase and sale in closed session. We'd fine-tune our negotiations, and then we do a public disclosure after the sale closed. However, this is the first sale of a road allowance that's proceeding under the new section 10.1 of our land sale bylaw. And in that bylaw, it requires that council consider the bylaw to stop up, close, and then sell the portion of land in open session, and give any member of the public who is interested the opportunity to make a representation before council. So tonight we're satisfying that requirement in the bylaw. We're holding our public meeting, and if anybody is in the gallery and wishes to speak to it, they may. Within the agreement of purchase and sale, it is fairly straightforward. The appraised price of the land is at $125,000. We are looking at a very quick closing because this is attached to a person who owns a piece of land and would like to make a submission on a development file. So we would like to see this close. It says 3 days after council approves the bylaw. That may slightly change just because it still is undergoing review by the purchaser solicitor. And as is standard in all of our agreements of purchase and sale, the purchaser will will cover all of the town's reasonable costs. So within the enacting bylaw you'll see later in the evening, it does ask for council to declare the piece of property surplus, stop up and close the portion of the road allowance, as well as delegate authority to the CAO to complete any final negotiations of the agreement of purchase and sale, just because it still is in that negotiation phase. We chose to bring this forward tonight because our next meeting is not until May 13th, and we would like to see it close in the period between tonight and May 13th. In terms of any changes I could foresee to the APS, one thing we did miss was our standard buyback provision. So because this is attached to a development file, typically what happens is the town will buy back the land if the development file is not successful. So we would just buy it back for the same amount that they purchased. So that will go into the APS. And I think that's all I needed to cover. And I'm happy to take any questions from council.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councilor Linder.
Sorry, thank you. Thank you, Worship. If we close the sale now, if we agree to the sale now, does that hinder our ability to get the affordable units in any way? Like,
Not necessarily. So, because this transaction involves real cash, the purchaser will be giving us $125,000, and we will be holding that money. The agreement to create affordable housing units will be done as a separate negotiation. So we'll negotiate what's called a municipal housing agreement with them. And essentially what would happen is we'll negotiate a sufficient number of affordable units in the development that is equivalent to $125,000. They could walk away, but if they walk away, they don't get their $125,000 back. So it's, and then we would have $125,000 to put towards other strategic initiatives related to housing. I can share with you that I believe that both us and the purchaser are both very keenly motivated to move in the same direction. This is just happening. This is happening at this point in time because them having clear title to the land then means the town doesn't have to be party to the development application, which is, for transparency reasons, is just a good thing. And because the negotiation of the housing agreement, which is still underway, it's just taking longer because it's a new kind of agreement for us. And as council is aware, our solicitor is very risk adverse and is trying to make sure that we've covered up any of our exposures. And it's delayed the development file already by 2 to 3 months. We don't want to delay it any further.
so there's no way to guarantee that we will get affordable units?
No, there's no way to guarantee we'll get affordable units, but what we will have is, again, the $125,000 from the developer. So I think, like I said, they're very motivated. They don't they're getting financing in place to buy this from us. As far as I'm aware, they want their money back as quickly as possible. So I don't think there's any risk to that negotiation. I still believe that we'll get units out of this. But as I said, if we don't, then we have $125,000 we put in reserve, and it will help. It'll help us fund our community improvement plan as it relates to affordable units, and we'll be able to subsidize other units in the future.
Further questions? Okay, so seeing nothing, I'll put a motion on the floor then that amend 22-2025 agreement of purchase and sale 11 Kane Street report be received, and that council consider bylaw 28-2025 being a bylaw to stop up, close, and declare surplus a portion of the Queen Street Road allowance legally described as Part 1 on the reference plan 44R-6336 attached here 2, and being part of PIN 53252-0372LT to delegate authority to the Chief Administrative Officer to negotiate such changes to the agreement of purchase and sale as may be necessary to bring it to final form, and to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign an agreement of purchase and sale with Group 40 Holdings, Inc. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councilor Craigmile, second by Councilor Lucas. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? The motion is carried. Okay, next up, 7.2, Building and Development Services. Mr. Brower, please.
Good evening, Council. You have my report in front of you. I will just make a highlight or two because of things have not changed a lot within the department. Lots of things going on, but as far as the monthly update, there is everything seems to be status quo, as you could say. One thing I will make note to council is that our building permits are, even though that the building industry is a little slow right now. Again, this is not a St. Mary's issue. Is all building officials I talk to across the province are showing some decline as far as building permits. Our residential units are up as what we see that are coming through the planning cycle, and ones that are coming through the building code cycle or the building permit cycle. We will fulfill our goal or monthly 40 or not 40-year average, but 10-year average for dwelling units. So that is overall a good news item. So I'll turn it over to council if they have any more questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Mr. Brower? Okay, thank you for your report. So I'll put a motion on the floor that DEV 13-2025 April month report, Building and Development report be received for information. Someone going to move that motion, moved by Councilor Allward, seconded Counselor Edney, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried.
Thank you, council.
Thank you. Moving on to 7.3, Community Services. Ms. Ishii, please.
Good evening. Just a couple of updates for our monthly report. We're getting ready for all of our outside programming, opening up all of our outside sports courts and locations, and getting ready for summer programming. But the one item that I want to draw council's attention to is under our spending and variance analysis section. So we have talked about purchasing the pickleball nets for the portable pickleball nets for the racket courts. We have looked high and low for these nets. The nets are the nets that the pickleball club is looking for specifically. And due to the tariffs, the nets are going to be a little bit more expensive. We did find a Canadian supplier, however, they are made and produced in China, shipped through the US and then to Canada. So we are going to have to pay the 124% tariff for those nets to arrive to Canada. I have been working with a company to see if they can ship directly from China to a supplier here in Canada, so we can avoid the 124% tariffs or 125% tariffs, but I have not been able to successfully do that yet, but we're still working on it on the back end. So I just wanted to bring that to light for everyone. Are there any questions?
Okay, thank you. Councilor Luna?
Thank you, Worship. Stephanie, you sent an email about the childcare initiative. Were you going to speak to that?
Yes, I'm going to speak to that in my childcare report.
Okay, sorry.
Just after this.
Sorry, yep.
Okay, Councilor Alward?
Thanks, Your Worship. This is oddly specific stuff, so I'm not sure if you'll be able to peg it for me or not, but just in the impact and customer feedback, it lists from a researcher in Michigan, it says, "Thank you, this was much more enjoyable and worthwhile than I was expecting." What were they talking about?
No, that is very specific. I cannot answer that specifically, but I can find out for you.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome.
Probably genealogy at the museum would be my guess. Yeah.
It will be at the museum, but I don't know specifically what it was related to.
Anything further for Ms. Ishii? Okay, I'll put the motion on the floor then that DCS 25-2025 April monthly report community services be received for information. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councilor Alward, seconded Councilor Pridham. Any further discussion? If none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to report with regards to childcare services. Ms. Ishii, please.
All right. I can speak to Councillor Luna's question regarding the email I did send earlier today. So this was a notification that we did receive from the province regarding childcare fees and what will happen moving forward. It has been indicated that at this point, the federal government has not indicated that they will continue to fully fund their portion of the delivery of the service for the $10 a day childcare. So we are holding tight and waiting to see what this means. This announcement is not until April of 2026, so they're giving us a year's notice. However, I wanted to inform council because these letters we do need to send out to the families in advance to let them know that there may be some changes to their daily rates of pay moving forward. So I just wanted to give council the general overview of it. And as we know more, I will share with council. Maybe after the election, we will hear more of a solid answer, and I suspect we might hear of more funding coming our way, but we will wait and see, and hopefully we'll hear more in the next little bit. So to dive into the childcare services report that you have before you, so the reason I'm bringing this before council is because I know council continues to hear a variety of questions regarding childcare lengthy wait lists, as it remains a frustration for many of the parents within the community. So this report that I have before council has a whole bunch of information from our previous reports, and hopefully tries to answer some of those questions so it gives council the information as you may get asked on the street or receive emails about what that means for individuals. So the child care services, we still do operate three different specialty services. So we do offer the child care services, before and after school care, and the early on program. So those are our three main services that we offer within our community. And while our numbers continue to go up, so our wait list does and has continued to increase, I did break it down for council to let council see how that wait list is broken down. So you'll notice within the report, as of April 9th of 2025, we have broken it down into who is on the wait list, number of using infants as an example. So there's 241 on the wait list of infants. Of those, 101 are St. Mary's residents. So we asked social services to break the numbers out for us to give us a better idea of exactly how many are local residents. And we'll continue to see if we can do that moving forward to give us a little bit more information. So currently in our center, we do have 72 children that that are in our programs at the Child Care Center. And then we still offer 112 spaces at the before and after school program. So back in February of 2009, or February 26th of 2019, quite a while ago, we did present to council, and council approved our wait list strategy moving forward. And we've been following that process since that time. While the process was similar to that prior to 2019, we solidified it and made it a little bit more formalized at that time. So we've continued with that process since that time, and I have also included that within the report, which speaks to children that are currently enrolled in part-time care and would like to attend full-time are first on the spot. Children that are on the wait list that already have a sibling within the program are second, and then to families that reside in the town of St. Mary's. So those are the processes that we have been using moving forward. But we know that the wait list is very frustrating to people in the community. We try our best to accommodate as many people as we can, as quickly as we can, but we just can't get through the wait list, and the wait list has gone up over 100 since last year at this time. So we think we're going to continue to see those numbers and that growth. So I'll leave that with council and ask me any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Questions from council? Councilor Luna.
Thank you, Worship. Stephanie, the three criteria that you list for moving from the wait list to a spot, I agree with number one, that they are currently part-time moving to full-time, and I agree with number three, that they live in St. Mary's. I'm starting to question number two, the validity of having a sibling in the program. And I don't I know that that's a big problem with a lot of people, that they're never going to get into the daycare because they don't have a sibling there already. So can you rationalize that for me?
So at the time, sorry, I apologize. So at the time when we came up, this is a very similar policy that many childcare centers utilize. So we did look around. We did listen to what council and the community said at that time, and there was always a struggle. I have one infant in the or one toddler in the program, and I'm having a baby. So now I'm going to pull my toddler out of the program to go to private care. So they would be pulling their children out. It was one of those situations where we tried to not split up families. It was very important that we kept the family together in that family unit so they would be able to move through the system as well. So it was more along the lines of not splitting up families.
Yeah, I'm still questioning it in my mind. I haven't worked through it yet, but I know that a lot of people are very vocal about that part of the criteria, and I don't know if we should relook at that, or I'm just throwing that out.
So if I can add, all other childcare centers do have that within their rationale for wait lists.
Councilor Pridham?
Just to further that, a question, when you know that someone's expecting and there's a space available, do you hold that vacancy for that, you know, to allow the sibling to join the group? Or you don't want to place someone else in there when you know there's a sibling on the way?
No. So the spot is not held for anybody. As the spot becomes available and Jen plays plays, I was going to say plays her game of Tetris because we call it that a lot, but looks at the whole puzzle piece, we fill in children as they come available. It's a bit of a juggling mix. So at that time, spots are not held and we don't wait for somebody to get in there. We literally take them as the spot becomes available.
Yeah, I too have been questioning the sibling relevancy, because it seems like you've kind of won the lottery. If you get one in there and you're planning on having a few, you've got a guaranteed spot. The other thing that, because it's now a supported daycare with federal funds, and it doesn't seem to be any looking at income levels. The people that can use that subsidy the most, you know, they struggle because they have a lower income than maybe some others that are currently using the system. So that's another piece that I feel, just because it's being supported, that should maybe be looked at. And my other question is, for the before and after school, we have kids on the wait list. And I know that you're recruiting the ECEs for both locations. Do you ever get a surplus of ECEs that you could, you know, from year to year, maybe expand the program because you have an extra 1 or 2 people that have applied, and you can add, you know, more spaces? It may not be permanent because you may not always have those, but do you ever, you know, I guess, turn people away because you've hired someone else in their place?
So we never have ECEs waiting in the perimeter to get in. If we do, we will hire them. So we do not have an additional amount of ECEs, so we can open more spots. Am I answering that question correctly?
Yes, correct.
If we did, that would be wonderful. But the before and after school program is a little bit more challenging to hire for, and it's only because it is a contract position. It's a split shift. It's not as appealing. So if you're an ECE and we need all these ECEs in Perth County, you're going to look for that full-time permanent position with benefits. We completely understand that. So that's why it's a little bit more of a challenge.
Yeah. Okay.
But yes, if we had somebody that was waiting there, absolutely. And if we know of anybody, send them our way for sure.
Okay. Councilor Graham?
Thank you, Worship. Stephanie, and this is probably not fair questions to ask you, so you can always get back to us at a later date. But I think something that council would be really interested in knowing, so at the daycare center, of the 72 spots, how many of those spots are taken up by siblings, brothers and sisters or whatever? That'd be kind of an interesting number to actually know, because we might think it's half of them are brothers and sisters, and that may be way off or something. And then some questions I've always had is the wait list, and it's big all over Ontario, but do you have to manage it to take people off the list? Like you know that somebody signed up when they were 9 months, they've been on for 5.5 years, therefore they're going to be outside the age, and you take them off, or do they just always stay there until, or how do you manage that wait list to whittle it down or whatever?
Okay, so I can answer. So first of all, so everybody's not confused. So we don't guarantee spots for siblings. It is one of our wait list criteria, but we're not going to hold a spot for a sibling. So I don't want anybody to think similarly to if you're pregnant and expecting a baby. So it's not like I have a second child, so we're going to hold a spot. So they're not held for siblings. So to answer your second question, as it comes to the wait list, it is the individual's responsibility to go back on that wait list every 6 months, I think it is at this time, and update their information. So once your name goes on the wait list, You go back into the system and you update your information every 6 months. You know, have I found childcare? How old is my child now? Am I still interested in childcare in this location? Those are the types of things. Now, Jen, from our perspective, from an internal perspective, Jen looks at that wait list regularly. If we know somebody will be moved off that wait list, Jen will reach out to them and say, hey, you know, you're coming up. We're going to be able to get you in. We see this happening. So she does a lot of communication back and forth. She does not email 634 people regularly, update them regularly via email and phone. That is just not possible because we don't know. Will people remove their names off the list? Will they be on the list next week? Maybe they move away. We don't know. So the list is constantly evolving and constantly shifts and changes. Some people put their name on the list before they're pregnant. So, you know, those types of things happen. So we don't necessarily know, but it is on the individual to go back and check that list. If their name and they don't update and go in there regularly every 6 months, their name is automatically removed. And that's from the system itself through social services. We don't have anything to do with that. They will automatically be removed off that list. So we have had calls from individuals in the past that have been like, oh, I didn't go back and check and my name's removed and I was number 200 and whatever. Jen prints copies of that list regularly. So if we know they were on the list, we can get them back on there, but that's just us doing it out of the goodness of our heart to constantly double check, triple check, quadruple check, and try to help people out. So those types of things Jen does do currently. So I hope that helps. If I didn't clarify that enough, ask away.
That's good information that I had no idea about. So thank you very much.
Further? I think there's, you know, the $10 thing is interesting because it has pushed people in the private sector out of the business, which is a big problem. It's also increased our waiting list. And to the point about need and income, and I think what might happen in the future, and there's been hints of this already, is that we may end up losing control of our service in terms of who gets on the register, i.e. the people from out of town because of provincial subsidy and federal subsidization. So the whole program could change. And it was a very costly, I mean, we made a conscious decision because of economic development, more young families coming and so forth. But when we did the child care system, I mean, I sound like a broken record, but I never thought that we'd see these kind of numbers and this kind of a problem. I thought that when we did the Holy Name deal at the time, the school was in trouble, enrollment was declining, and since then, you know, lots changed. So, and at the time, it was an expensive service. COVID and a lot of different things has changed it, but I have concerns going forward because the government never tends to give anything for free, including, you know, enhanced mayor powers. Actually, I think that one's coming out of the woodwork yet, actually. So the reality is there may become more strings attached to the operation of the service, and in a few years, we may be forced to have some difficult decisions to make. The unfortunate part is, you know, I'm a big believer in government stepping in when the private sector can't do something and providing a necessary service. And this is an example of something. We're not required on the Municipal Act to do this, but we are doing it because there was a gap way back when in the private sector, and the gap, I would argue, continues to grow. We've all been contacted about daycare. The one that's particularly troubling for me is that, and you know, and I talked to the staff about this before, is the part-time thing. You know, people who have staggered shifts or for whatever reason, you know, can't provide part-time, and I get it, with only 72 spots, you know, to match, you know, 3 days a week up versus 2 days a week and all this type of thing, it becomes a logistical nightmare. But that was a service we provided before. So we have not only decreased our service, we've made it cheaper via the government, but at the end of the day, a lot of things could change to make this a very expensive service in the future that we don't have control over. So I think there's change coming. I do say that I think the girls, larger girls, I mean, they're all girls up there. The staff, I should say the staff, I apologize, do a very good job of managing the center. And, you know, it's a great place, but, you know, I think that given the funding structure and things, there could be a lot of change in the future. I think we have to be prepared for that. And I don't think, you know, we've talked about this before, even if we had a pot of money to build a new center or whatever, we're not certain that we could operate on the current government guidelines and provide the staffing necessary to operate it. That's a big part of the problem as well. So it's a real conundrum. We're going to continue, and it's something that I wish we could solve easily, but unless we're willing to dedicate a tremendous amount of money, which could be amplified by changes in the government, right? We didn't get subsidized from the government before. Now we have this subsidized, and we sort of stream things to it in terms of our staffing levels and everything. If the program changed a lot, it could become a lot more expensive overnight. So anyway, that's just kind of my thoughts, and I appreciate the report because it points out a lot of things to remind us, but it's just not, I don't see a simple solution. I am surprised at the amount of people from out of town that are applying. Why is that? Just, is it a further application that everyone just puts their name everywhere they can?
That could be part of it, but part of it is some of those individuals on there also work in town.
Yes.
So that is also a part of it as well, or have grandparents in town, or, you know, so there's all those types of things that kind of, you know, build into it as well.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, anything further? Councilor Craigmile?
Thank you, Rizzo. Steph, what you did say about signing up to get on the list. So you said that you could sign up and you're not even pregnant. I mean, that's, surely you must, when somebody's signing up, you must get an age of them so you know whether they're infant, preschool, or whatever. I mean, so, you know, somebody signing up to say, well, I think in the next year I'd like to have a baby, you know, like.
So that's a great question. And I've been kind of, Jen apologizes that she couldn't be here tonight. She had a previous appointment, so wasn't able to come and present. So she has been sending me a couple of notes, and she did say additionally that she tries to ensure that people that are not pregnant yet do not go on the list. But sometimes you'll get, if you use me as an example, baby Ishi on the list. It might not say a whole lot of information on there, so she really monitors that. Jen has been really vigilant because we know that there is, you know, such a demand here in our community, so she is really vigilant and on top of it right now. So we're trying our best. We wish we could get everybody in. I really wish there was a really easy solution, and I feel people's frustrations, as I know council does, as you get calls and questions on the street. But we just don't have the best solution. We're doing what we can right now with the space that we have.
And I'm quite aware that a lot of times it just happens and it's not planned or whatever, but it just bothers me to think that, oh, I think maybe 2 years from now we should think about having an infant. Let's get on that list. You know, you know what I'm saying?
It's because everybody is so stressed about it. That's part of it, right? Everybody is really stressed. They know how difficult it is, and then if you can't, is there private care in your area? So it is a challenge. I mean, we can definitely identify it as, and since moving to Holy Name and even prior to COVID, we had a wait list. So things have been increasing, and there has definitely been a demand for it. So I sense people's anxiety, frustration, everything with it.
Oh, I agree.
Councilor?
So thank you, Worship. The bottom line, Steph, is that even if council approved a multi-million-dollar facility to be built, which, you know, would be wonderful, you don't have the staff to do it. There isn't the staff available in Ontario to do it, correct? To accommodate.
Right now. You are correct right now. There are different programs that are being offered. They're trying to look at getting more youth into the RECE program. There are those types of pushes right now and programs that are happening, but that's, you know, a 2-3 year program out. So, you know, there's a little bit. They're also doing training with individuals that might already be working in the field, but do not have any certification where they can go back to school and get it much quicker, like a fast track type program. So those are the types of things that are out there. They're trying to do that, but there is definitely a shortage in the area right now. But there are people that are definitely, I mean, we're definitely encouraging that program for sure.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? All right, thank you for that report. So the suggested motion that DCS 26-2025 Child Care Services Report be received for information. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Craigmile, second by Councillor Luna. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, how about a good news story? National Volunteer Week. Steph, please.
Yeah, this is a really easy one. This is a housekeeping one that comes back every year. We present this annually. Volunteer Week this year is April 27th to May 3rd. We have a lot of volunteers within our community. I know as council knows, we are hosting our own event the end of this month. And additionally, the Strong as Stone initiative still continues, which is open for applications at this time as well. So I don't really know much else to say about this if anybody has any questions, but we're looking for council to proclaim April 27th to May 3rd National Volunteer Week.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments from council? Okay, when do the Strong as Stone applications close? Steph, do you know when that is? I'm sorry, I don't have it. It's soon.
I do not have that, but I will get that for you.
It's soon, I think, is it not?
It's soon, but I want to say it's the end of this month, but I might be wrong.
I'm not sure. I can't remember either. All right.
I can find out.
That's fine. Anything further? Okay, so then the suggested motion is DCS 28-2025 National Volunteer Week report be received, and the council proclaim the week of April 27th to May 3rd, 2025 as Volunteer Week. Someone want to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Pridham, seconded. Councillor Lucas. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, thank you for your reports. Okay, moving on to 7.4, corporate services. Mr. Morin, please.
Good evening, Council. So before you use my monthly report, a pretty typical monthly report in front of you, so I won't go through it. One comment, May 2nd is when the Strong as Stone applications are due, FYI. But in my report, I did, Council asked this question several times during budget processes over the years, but I've attached 3 reports that we just received from Ministry of Municipal Affairs. The first report on page 67 of your report is the annual repayment limit. So this is the amount that we're allowed to borrow for capital purposes. So it's a little different than what you would think. The annual repayment limit is based on the amount that we're allowed for repayment. So that's the debt amount, principal, and the interest. Our repayment limit for 2025 is $4,950,000. What that could mean, there's an example on page 67. Let's say we took out debt at 5% over a 20-year period. You can take out debt up to $60 million or $61 million. The point of that report is to say we are well within our annual repayment limit. The calculation of that is on page 68. But I know this is a question that Council asks several times, so I wanted to include it in this report. Happy to answer any questions on that one as we move forward or as you review. The second report is also something you've probably seen in the past, but it's called the Financial Indicator Review. So uses our 2023 FIR financial information and has several benchmarks they have on that one page, and then assigns a level of risk. And you'll note for us for 2023, we're all of our indicators there are at a low risk level. So again, that continues to be good news. And you'll notice it has since 2019, and we've always been low with one exception. The debt servicing costs were moderate from 2021, prior to 2021. But really, that's just an interesting report that, again, I provide to Council each year that I wanted to provide to you. And the last report, which starts on page 72 of your package. This was a new report that Municipal Affairs is providing to municipalities, and it's called the Municipal Financial Profiles Report. What it does is, again, I'm not going to go through this whole report. There is quite a bit of information about all kinds of factors. Has our information from 2019 to 2023 using various analysis and various basically points and pieces out of the FIRs that municipalities submit. But then also has our comparators for our South single tiers, so single tier municipalities located in southwestern Ontario, and then also has a column that shows the provincial averages, just to see how we're doing across the boards. We'll dive into a few more of these when we present our usually when we present our pre-budget in June or July. But I did want to provide this information to council as it pertains some pretty cool metrics and information that I'm sure a lot of you will find fairly interesting. With that being said, like I said, it's fairly intensive report. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them on that report. Send me an email, send me information, and we can break it down a little further for you. Any questions you do have, we'll probably need to do a little bit of research on in some of the areas, but there are some interesting intel in there, again, that we will use to report on when we talk about the 2026 budget, pre-budget process coming up this summer. So with that, just happy to answer any questions on the report, our monthly report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Luna?
Thank you, Worship. Andre, when we borrow from ourselves through the PUC fund, does that get calculated into the repayment limit? Or because it's like a private loan, we don't have to?
Through the mayor, it depends on how we do it. Currently, right now, because we're doing it reserve to reserve, or basically a reserve transfer, it does not. When we actually formalize it, it will count towards our repayment limit as well.
Okay, further questions? Okay, so the suggested motion is that COR 17-2025 April monthly report, corporate services, be received for information. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Allward, seconded. Councillor Pridham. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Next up, with regards to tax rates and ratios, Mr. Morin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, a report that we talk about each year. This is basically the final step to our 2025 budget. Now that the budget is approved, we go through the process of analyzing and calculating the actual tax rates. There's no surprises here. Everything is as we had discussed during the budget process. You can see within the report, I've just outlined it in the background information just for you to refamiliarize yourself with what we passed in January as part of the final budget. As well, within the report, we talk about a little bit how property taxes are calculated. Number one, using current value assessment, which again, important to note, we are still based on 2016 valuation date. No news on that front as of yet. The province is still reviewing their assessment and property tax analysis, and we would expect to hear something this year where decisions will be made as to what property taxation in municipalities will look like over the coming years. But at this point in time, we don't have any new information. The important part of what we're making decisions on this evening is the tax class ratios. So again, just to, I know because you do this once a year, the ratios of residential is always the base is 1.0. All other ratios are based on that rate or on the residential ratio. So as an example, if you have a commercial ratio of 2.0, that would mean a commercial property would pay 2 times what a residential property would pay. If it's 1.5, which is around what it is for St. Mary's, they would pay 1.5 times based on the same value of assessment. Our ratios are listed on page 87 of your report. We haven't identified and are not recommending any changes to those ratios. Within that page, we've also identified for council just some of our neighboring municipalities or neighboring counties or regions in regards to their ratios. And as you can see on that chart on page 87, ratios for commercial, industrial, and multi-residential vary quite drastically. And this is a myriad of reasons why that would be. But as you can see, the ratios vary from district to district. Within a upper tier and lower tier situation. So for example, Perth County, the upper tier sets the ratio, and then all the lower tiers would have that same ratio, which is why I've listed in here St. Mary's and Stratford, for example, as municipalities, but we're single tier, and all of the other, and London would be the other single tier. All of the others would be under their upper tier county or region structure. But I wanted to provide that comparator information for you to see. And then lastly, education taxes have not changed for 2025 as well, so that has no impact. What happens is on page 88, you'll see the final tax summary. As we discussed during the budget process, that our net tax increase is 3.63%, and you can see that across all of our classes, property classes. Our increase will be 3.63%. So once passed, there's two bylaws in front of you this evening. One is for the tax ratios, and then the next one is for all the tax rates that come out of those ratios. We will send out our tax bills later in the summer, with the first due date being August and the second due date being October, end of October, which is again our typical process, and we haven't changed that in a number of years. So again, a lot of information in this report, something we talk about each year. So I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have on this or dive into a little deeper.
Okay, thank you. Questions from council? We did have a discussion about this at budget time about changing the ratios, and you gave quite a lengthy explanation about it. So I think council kind of understands where we're at. Okay, anything further? I'll put it on the floor then that COR 18-2025 property tax rates and ratios 2025 report be received, and that council consider bylaw 22-2025 being a bylaw to set tax ratios for prescribed property classes for municipal purposes for the year 2025, and that council consider bylaw 23-2025 being a bylaw to levy the rates of taxation for the year 2025. So I'm going to move that motion. Moved by Councillor Alward, second by Councillor Pridham. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, thank you. Moving on to provincial gas tax.
Perfect. It looks like we kind of save always the best of the good news for the last report. Again, we're receiving the same amount of money as received in the past, $163,485 from provincial gas tax. This goes to fund our mobility transit. The one note I'll provide you here is we do provide an operating amount for 2025. That'll be $110,000 to the mobility, and the rest goes into reserve for future capital or future transit-related expenditures. Our reserve sits at around $460,000. But again, just this report is just for the mayor and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the agreement with the province of Ontario.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor Pridham.
I know that this is maybe not related to the topic, but just the municipal contributions, Zora 1,000 and Thames Centre 1,000 and Perth South 2,600. Is that based on the number of clients that use the service, or how is that number reached?
Through the mayor, great question. So that number has been stable and the same for almost 20 years now. It was numbers that were set when the agreements were reached many years ago in order to set up this structure where the town of St. Mary's administers these funds on behalf of basically the four municipalities. And at the time, it was likely based on the amount of service that was going to be provided. Recently, we've been talking to mobility about putting agreements in place. We have not been able to track down any formalized agreements in relation to these amounts or those relationships. It is something that we'll likely put back together. I have talked to mobility just around the amount of service we provide for South, Zora, and Thames Centre. Those numbers appear to be fairly consistent with the ridership, and that ridership goes up and down each year. And there's argument to be made that in Zora and Thames Centre, for example, in some cases they receive very little service for a year, depending on the clientele. But it is something that as we look at those agreements and bring those back to council, we'll probably have a closer look at what those are. The way the provincial gas tax works is in order to have municipalities receive funding, you have to at least have a financial commitment, which is why those financial commitments were put in place those nominal amounts were put in place in order for their population and their numbers to be counted in the overall formula.
Thank you.
Okay, anything further? All right, thank you for that report. The suggested motion is that COR 19-2025 Provincial Gas Tax Agreement Report be received, and the council confirms that the town of St. Mary's continues to be the host of transit joint service for the town of St. Mary's, Township of Perth South, Township of Zora, and Municipality of Tan Center, and that council consider bylaw 24-2025 being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign an agreement with the province of Ontario for provincial gas tax funds for public transportation program. Someone willing to move that motion? Councillor Allward moves. Councillor Edney seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing now, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, Andre.
Yep.
Moving on to 7.5, Fire and Emergency Services. Chief Anderson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Proud to present Emergency Services report for the month of April. Some of the department highlights, maybe a little bit of lowlights there. Of course, my resignation, my last day being May 19th. Chief Fire Prevention Officer is retiring. He has indicated now April 29th will be his last day, not May 2nd. Chief Fire Prevention Officer hiring process, we have selected an individual and he is to begin on the 28th to start doing a 2-day turnover, and I will work with that individual until the day I leave. And firefighter Lucas Jeffrey resigned March 31st after serving 9+ years to become a police officer in Waterloo. Calls for service, as you can see, we had 12 emergency responses and such. Average attendance of firefighters is up from the last report. You can see how many we've had for the year, 44 compared to 31, slightly up. The fire prevention officer continued to do his thing, and as you can see with the amount of inspections and such, as well as carrying on with the mentorship program through Fanshawe. It's very successful, and I'm sure it'll continue on. Training firefighters with excellent training with the fireground operations and such. We conducted mask fitting, which was way overdue, and such. And we had the unique opportunity. I connected with Huron Search and Rescue, and what we did is sent half of the firefighters up to their location to check out equipment and their facility. And right now they're working together to develop a training plan between us and them for the future. So this is a really good connection for the St. Mary's Fire Department. You see some of the spending and variances and such. I always put just the ones that are normally over 1,000, but the fire chief's pickup truck, that was way overdue. So that's why that one high price. Smoker gear inspection, cleaning, CVI inspection, and that was on our rescue truck. It required some brakes and such. And the ladder testing is conducted annually as well. So that's everything. That's everything for the month for April.
Great, thank you, sir. Questions from council? Councilor Pridham.
Oh, just about the automatic alarms, there were 9 of them. Are we collecting for those calls a fee?
We are not, and a lot of them, unfortunately, are like a lot of them are one-offs. It's not like where we're going to one say location and we're going there 5 times in one day. That's not happening. So like we randomly will get individuals. It is a lot. It's always at the forefront because automatic alarms are tied in with even sometimes with homes. If they have home security systems and such, and they go off. So those are all tied into the automatic alarms as well. Definitely, there is a bylaw for that, which can be implemented in that. It'd be a little bit difficult because you don't target the actual location. You have to, if it was a alarm company, then you have to you'd have to bill the location, and they would have to extract that from the alarm company if, say, they forgot to put it in bypass. We'll put it like that. So they're kind of random. Sometimes, like I said, it's not. It might be something like a malfunctions, sprinkler flow, like a high pressure that will set them off. So it's as much as it looks large, it's not like one location where it's okay. If we're going there 2-3 times in a row, okay, now we have a concern, right? So,
Okay, thank you.
Further questions, Councillor Elwood?
Not a question, but I suppose I would just say, on behalf of the community, thank you to yourself and Lucas and Brian for your service to the community we all care about so much. It is deeply appreciated and cannot go unstated. Thank you.
thank you, sir.
Okay. Anything further?
I'd like to say something, Mayor, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
absolutely, sure.
Yeah, so this is probably my last one for council. As I don't know if you know that or not, it was a tough decision for me to make. You know, and I have to thank past councils and present council for all of your support over my 9 years. And I know I asked for a lot of money. It wasn't easy, but it was always for the betterment of the fire department and the protection of the town. Same with the town staff as well. Probably got the best boss I could ever have with the CAO. I've mentioned that before. His direction and that, there was always the Brent Kipmer level to reach. And, you know, it makes everyone else around him better. Our community absolutely loves our firefighters, and rightfully so. Firefighters that all that they do, but when the community comes out for charities and events like that, it is overwhelming to see the support and nothing but praise for them. And ultimately, my firefighters already know how I feel. It was hard to break that news to them. I held on to that for a few days and you can probably see right now. You know, over 9 years, past and present firefighters, you know, we slowly developed, worked together through education and emergency responses to where I see I played a big part in their development, and I am so honored and proud. I'm in my 45th year of firefighting, and I can tell you right now that your firefighters are probably the best that I've ever served with in my entire career. And I look forward now to working with the fine men and women of the Stratford Fire Department and to help build on the solid foundation that they have established. I'm glad I was able to say that, sir.
No, that's great. Thank you very much. We certainly appreciated all you've done for the town. It was a difficult period in transition, but we certainly gave you a mandate to modernize and to update the training, and we are all very proud of our fire department, what it's become, including a new facility. And a lot of it's due to your leadership, and we really appreciate everything you've done for the town. It's been tremendous, Andy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, well, thank you for your report, and thank you for your service, and we do have a chance to see you a few more times, hopefully, before things wrap.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. So the suggested motion is that FD 06-2025 April monthly report emergency services be received for information. Someone want to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Craigmile, second by Councillor Luna. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
7.6, Human Resources. Ms. Knechtel, are you with us this evening?
Thank you, Mayor Strathy. Yes, I am. I have a new laptop and it's a bit of a challenge this evening. So if you can't hear me or you need anything repeated, just let me know. Great. So I was actually going to talk a little bit about the recruiting and mention that there were some leaving the fire department, but Chief Anderson has eloquently spoke to that. So I will not. Just to say that we are very busy with recruiting. On the report, it says that we posted 3 positions in March. In the first 2 weeks of April, there were 8 positions posted. So just kind of to give you a bit of perspective on that. Other than that, the information is in my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. Questions from council? All right, pretty straightforward report. Thank you for your report. The suggested motion is that HR 04-2025 April monthly report Human Resources be received for information. So I'm willing to move that motion. Moved by Councillor Edney, seconded. Councillor Pridham. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All is in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Moving on to item 7.7.1 with regards to Public Works. Mr. Kelly, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Report is there. I'm not going to speak to all of it. It looks like they flipped a switch. It is spring. So we are kind of moving through that, just working through the departmental plan. So far, we haven't had any capital increases due to the tariffs. It's good. All the fleet is in Canada. It's not on site yet, but it is in Canada. And probably the biggest thing in there is we're gonna have to. Sorry, did someone say something there?
No.
Probably the biggest thing is there's a note on page 101 of the agenda. The sidewalks on Wellington Street that were poured last year will have to be replaced. They're spalling pretty bad. It has to do with the timing of the general contractor and the subcontractor. The other concrete work, the curbs are in good shape. They were poured about 3 weeks ahead, so they hardened up, but that will probably be the biggest thing in the report to note.
Okay, thank you.
At no cost to the town. It's something between the general and the sub. So, but just inconvenience to the residents.
Is there timing for that, Jed, yet nailed down yet? And what does that involve, actually? Just because there'll be probably a lot of questions about that.
Yeah, so they were kind of getting closer to restoration, so they're obviously lifting the sidewalks, so there'll be asphalt restorations to driveways and things like that. So turf repairs will have to happen again. So, basically everything when lifting the sidewalk and anything abutting the sidewalk is going to have to be restored. So once we have timing, we will communicate that to council and the residents.
Thank you. Further questions for Mr. Kelly? Councillor Craigbaum?
Thank you, Worship. Jed, I just want to give you, it's not really in your report, but as much time as possible. Sometime around the end of the summer, you were going to be bringing back some information regarding the garbage in the blue box, the recycling pickup. One of the things when you bring that report back that I'd like to see is, so it was probably, was it April 1st, a year ago, when the municipality stopped paying for the blue box and it went to the pro. I mean, that's hidden, that's in the budget there somewhere, but it doesn't show up as line. So we have been saving, whatever per month for that. So I'd like to just know that number because that might offset those other charges you were talking about. But anyways, it's for your late summer report when you bring it back.
Okay, duly noted.
Okay.
Yep.
If you have any questions, call me.
Sorry, Your Worship. There is one more thing in the report I received before. We did receive word from Cascades. They're moving ahead with paving the laneway on James Street to stop the tracking. So we have received a sketch. So hopefully they're going to move ahead with that when in the spring. So we're moving ahead through that. So that did make it in the report, but it's really good news. So
okay, thank you for that. Questions for Mr. Kelly? All right, thank you. So the suggested motion is that PW 27-2025 April monthly report, Public Works, be received for information. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Craigmile, second by Councillor Luna. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on. I have nothing under emergent or unfinished business. I have nothing under notices of motion, which leads us to bylaws. We have 4 bylaws this evening. So the suggested motion that bylaws 22-2025, 23-2025, 24-2025, and 28-2025 be read a first, second, and third time be finally passed by council and signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Alward, seconded by Councillor Pridham. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Under upcoming meetings, May 13th, 6 p.m. regular council chambers, and that will include the public meeting for 121 Ontario Street, the former Westward School property, just so everyone's aware, or if you have questions from the public meeting will be that night. May 20th is a Strategic Priorities Committee, council chambers. May 27th, regular council. Are there any other upcoming meetings anyone wants to mention? Councillor Craig Mile?
Thank you, Worship. There's a big meeting going on at the PRC right now, and I have the score 0-0.
Good update. Thank you very much. Anything further for meetings or for the good of community? Anything? Okay, which leads us to closed session. So we'll break for 10 minutes before we go into closed session. Okay.
What about the leaves, Jimmy? What about the leaves? You got that score?
No, I don't.
Actually, bless you.
My phone doesn't work.
Okay, so we'll reconvene then. The next item is closed session, and I'll put a motion on the floor that council move into a session that is closed to the public at 7:56 PM as authorized under Municipal Act Section 239 2B, a personal matter about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by a municipality or local board. Moved by Councillor Edney, seconded Councillor Alward. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? The motion is carried.